All right, everyone, settle in. We're about to step into a pretty special lecture hall. Think of it as the Galactic University. And today's lesson, it's coming from a species that made it through one of the toughest transitions any civilization can face. Let's hear what humanity has to teach us. So, consider this a case study, a story for all of you, for every developing world out there. It's really the story of how our species, humanity, finally grew up. We're going to look at the old operating system that ran our world for thousands of years, why it broke, and what we had to build to replace it. This is our lesson. And believe me, it was hard-won. And now, we're offering it to you as a guide. You see, for most of our history, we lived in what we now call the age of scarcity. And this wasn't just a point in time, it was a state of mind. It was a deep-seated psychological condition that defined our species during its very long and very messy adolescence. At the absolute core of this era was the scarcity principle. It was this simple, kind of brutal belief that there was never, ever enough to go around. Now, this wasn't just some economic theory in a textbook. No, it was the invisible force that shaped everything. It built our hierarchies, it fueled our wars, and it literally wired our brains for constant anxiety and defense. Now, this table shows something that took us a long time to realize. Our old systems didn't just manage scarcity, they actually required it to function. I mean, think about competitive markets. Their entire logic is built on demand being greater than supply. So what happened when we started to experience real abundance? Well, the market's first impulse was to create artificial shortages, just to keep the game going. Our systems were literally designed to ration, not to distribute. And you can imagine the impact that had on us, inside. Scarcity basically made fear our default emotion. Every single decision we made was filtered through this lens of survival. It forced us all into short-term, defensive thinking. We were a species trapped in a never-ending fight-or-flight mode, completely unable to see the incredible possibilities that were sitting right in front of us. So, how did this all change? This ancient principle didn't disappear because we all suddenly had a change of heart. It started to dissolve because our capabilities just kept growing. We didn't really choose to end scarcity. We simply outgrew it. And that was the beginning of our maturation. And the signs were everywhere. You just couldn't deny them. When it became cheaper to get energy from our star than to dig up old buried fuels, that was a huge crack in the foundation. When our machines started to produce more than our own labor could, the whole link between work and survival started to fall apart. Suddenly, our crisis wasn't about a lack of stuff. The real crisis was us, clinging to an operating system that was hopelessly out of date. Which brings us to the solution that finally emerged from all that chaos. We had to build something completely new, a civilizational operating system designed not for rationing scarcity, but for coordinating abundance. We ended up calling it the utility economy. This chart here, it really tracks that evolution across our most basic needs. Just look at energy. It went from being this centralized geopolitical weapon to being the cheapest power source available, and finally to being a universal utility, like air. And we saw the same pattern again and again, with food, with housing, with information. The essentials for a good life stopped being commodities you had to hoard and became utilities we could all share. But the most profound change wasn't the technology, it was existential. For the very first time in our species' history, the vast majority of us were freed from that daily grind of just trying to survive. And that liberation, it let us ask a much, much deeper question. What's our purpose, now that survival is basically taken care of? Just think about how this changed the meaning of a simple, everyday question. What do you do? In the scarcity world, that question really meant, how do you make enough money to live? The answer was always your job, your income. But in the abundance world, that same question suddenly means, how do you contribute? And the answers became our art, our science, our discoveries, our way of caring for each other. It changed everything. Which brings us to the end of this lecture, and really to our whole purpose for being here today. We went through this incredibly difficult, often painful, transition so that emerging civilizations like yours, might have a map, a guide. We see this as our cosmic duty. If you remember nothing else from today, please remember this. Your technology will almost certainly make abundance possible long before your culture is ready to accept it. The real work isn't in the engineering. The real work is in the psychological and social maturing you have to do to let go of fear and to finally build systems based on trust and possibility. So we leave you with this question. The signs of abundance, they will appear in your world, just like they did in ours. That transition is inevitable. The only real question is, will you be prepared to mature with it? Will you be ready to let go of the scarcity mindset and embrace your own age of flourishing? The choice, just as it was for us, will be yours.